But we will start for the battle for a place in Thomas Tuchel's World Cup squad, and in particular the centre-back positions. The Sunday Telegraph goes with Maguire is fifth choice centre-back for Tuchel. Mike McGrath's piece says Harry Maguire faces a massive battle to secure a World Cup place, with Thomas Tuchel revealing at least four centre-backs are ahead of him in the pecking order for this summer's tournament. Well, Jonathan Northcroft was at Wembley on Friday night for England's draw against Uruguay. How do you assess the battle in that part of the pitch, Johnny?
Yeah, it's a battle, I think, that's suddenly hotted up with the return of Maguire to form and to the squad. He was probably England's second best player. I thought James Garner was outstanding on Friday night, but Maguire wasn't far behind, really asserted his claims. But then, of course, Thomas Tuchel, with that honesty that he's got, threw us all a curveball by actually outlining that there are still four centre-halves ahead of him. And, you know, three of them seem quite logical. They're not a surprise. Ezri Konsa, Mark Gahey and John Stones, who he loved. He threw in Trevor Chalobah, which raised a few eyebrows. Just, he thought Maguire might be ahead in terms of seniority. But, you know, Tuchel's nothing if not honest, as I say. Clearly outlining that, yes, Harry Maguire's done very well. He talked about his superpower in both boxes, the solidity of his defending. He mentioned how well Maguire had done in terms of the last few minutes of the game against Uruguay. England really had to defend their box and hang on, and he was at the forefront. But there's still players ahead of him. So it's become one of the more interesting subplots as we head towards the summer. And it'll be interesting to see how Harry sort of plays on Tuesday against Japan.
Jules, for someone who looks on, but also from a country that are blessed with options in various different positions, as a neutral, is he in England's best 26? Would he be in your squad if you were selecting it?
Not for me, no. I mean, I agree with Johnny in the sense that I thought he played well on Friday in a game where England didn't have that much to defend for really, apart from the last 5 minutes or so. But I think Chalobah even is, for me, ahead of Maguire, better than Maguire this season. Certainly has been more consistent through the whole season. The one is Stones, really, for the injuries and the injury prone. And I think if Stones was not fit enough to make the World Cup, I think then Maguire will be that fourth centre-back and we'll get there. But I'm not Harry Maguire's biggest fan either, so I would have no issues if he didn't make it.
Most of the papers do focus on the fact that Maguire might be the man to miss out. John Cross, ever the maverick, goes with another approach, more focusing on John Stones and his potential inclusion. The top line of John's piece: Thomas Tuchel is ready to give John Stones an England sick note until the World Cup. Who was the original sick note? My mind says Darren Anderton. Was the one before that, or...? No. You're nodding.
I think he's...
Yeah, he felt like the first one I ever remember.
He's the original and probably the biggest of a certain generation.
What a title to have.
I know, it's not. And then, do you think I've got it wrong? Have I read the room wrong? I was in on this chat with Thomas Tuchel, and I just thought that was quite interesting, you see, because we actually started, when we were talking to him, we went down the Stones line, because if you think about it, it is remarkable. He's obviously missed, he was in the squad originally, in the 35-man. Then he has actually been available and fit for City for a while. But they were missing two defenders in the Carabao Cup final. He still doesn't make the pitch. Yeah. I mean, it is remarkable. Please don't get me wrong here. I like John Stones. Everything that Tuchel said about him, I completely agree with. He is a class act. Class on the pitch, good tourist, brilliant for the squad. Experienced, top quality player. If he is playing enough games, and that's the crux of the matter, then for me, Stones has to be in that squad. But we are talking, Rob, about 4 Premier League starts this season. It's remarkable. And as I say, Carabao Cup final comes around, they're missing Diaz, Gay's not available, and Stones still doesn't make it. And that for me was, I mean, we got onto Maguire through asking about Stones. And then it did surprise me. It's always dangerous, Johnny, isn't it? That basically, if you ask Thomas Tuchel, never, ever stop or interrupt him. And woe betide a journalist, and I've got one in mind that basically does make a habit of it, not you.
Not me.
And then basically, because he sometimes fills that gap and that void and that space, and he is expansive and he does kind of run away. And he is talking about Trevor Chalobah, who may yet be out for another month. And basically, so therefore, it's another risk. But I personally would have Maguire in over Dan Burn. because I think if you're talking about having someone there who's a big guy, big physical presence, he's spoken a lot, hasn't he, Tuchel, about the importance in America of set pieces, corners, free kicks and the like, and also the need to be a good tourist. Well, I think Maguire spoke the other day about how he'd be very happy to go play 1 minute or every minute of the World Cup. That's his stage of his career. I also think he would then provide the physical presence. He's also got big time and tournament experience at the highest level. And if you are then talking about having someone who's there, maybe an option from the bench to make difference, to be involved in set pieces, it's all the rage. I think Harry Maguire gets in every time, and I would take Stones too, but under the strict proviso, he's just got to play some more games.
But if Stones is fit, he's your starter, right? He's starter.
No,
he's still the best.
I think he's your best centre defender.
Well, Ezri Konsa, I think in the Thomas Tuchel mindset, is ahead of Stones right now, because Ezri Konsa, I think, is underappreciated in my view, undervalued. Mark Gay, I think, has been outstanding this season, brilliant, and as a character, as a personality, going from that kind of soap opera at Palace to then basically being magnificent for City, I think has been a game changer for City, along with Semenyo, basically turned their season around, and he starts. And then you are talking Konsa v Stones, and I just think Konsa, just because of game time, might be ahead of Stones. But if as fully fit Stones is there, you'd have no worries at all, and he would be one of the best at the tournament.
Do you think, Jules, that Tuchel is a manager less inclined to pick on reputation, and that if he feels that Ezri Konsa, who could still yet finish the season by winning the Europa League with Villa, get them into the Champions League one way or t'other, if he thinks he's in better form and fitter, he's not as bothered by just the reputation of John Stones?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we've seen with Tuchel since he arrived that he does things his own way. Including in this international break, the 35 players, some have days off, they only join later, some will only play the first game, others only involved in the second game. So yeah, and I think that's the good thing about Tuchel, with the honesty that the boys have talked about. And I think he would be absolutely, he would have no problem to start somebody who has not the reputation of others. Maybe I do think that Stones, for me, in terms of all the talent, overall everything, is your best ball-playing centre-back by far. He's strong, he's tall, he's quick, he's smart, he's got experience, he's 32 years old. For me, he's got everything. The fitness is the question. But if he's fit, I would start him every day, probably with Gay. And I know it would be harsh on Konsa. I love Konsa too. But just because I think he's a more complete defender than Konsa.
I agree with that on Stones. I think on top of that, there's his tournament experience, which is second to none, really, in terms of English defenders. And he's got a habit of not being fit in the run-up to a tournament and then getting himself on the pitch. But Tuchel might be looking at combinations, and I guess the Gahey-Konsa combination is quite well established. I just think in the wake of this, he might take 5 centre-backs now. If he really wants to take Stones, but can't be entirely sure about his fitness in terms of playing every game, and England have got a packed schedule, I think he might now creep towards 5 centre-backs, especially given the right-back situation. Konsa might have to be used out there. Back, So Maguire might actually go as number 5.
What, Chalobah or Byrne would be the 4th, would you say?
I don't think you can take Maguire and Byrne. I agree, it's one of the
Because
two.
you could argue that Byrne also gives a little bit of cover as a left-back if things got particularly needed in that area.
Yeah, I think he's got more cover at left-back than right-back all of a sudden, because there's Jarrell Quansah as well, who you could take as a right back and a centre back. I think whatever Tuchel said to us, and his honesty, I'm pretty sure he said it to the players as well. By the way, I don't think he holds back in terms of how he spells things out. And Crossy and I were with Harry Maguire when he joined up, and he did say that thing about, if I just play 1 minute at the World Cup, it'll be enough. And in the wake of what Tuchel said to us on Friday, I think he's had the same conversation with Maguire, and I think that's Maguire reflecting what he already knows is the reality, that if there's a slot for you, it's as the elder statesman, but it's probably not as as a starter unless there's a crisis.
Craig Hope's piece in the Mail on Sunday says Maguire is timing his World Cup pitch to perfection. It's extraordinary that Tuchel doesn't agree, and says it's about a player in a good place at the right time, and Maguire is timing his World Cup pitch to perfection. To what extent to you does the last quarter of the season play a part, do you think, in his selection, or do you think he really deep down knows, and unless anything unbelievably major happens, he's almost there?
Well, I think he's probably almost there with his squad. I think there's a few positions. I'm fascinated by the number 10 battle, because honestly, one big name's going to miss out. Yeah. There's no two ways about it, whether that's Phil Foden, whether that's Cole Palmer. I mean, Phil Foden, I love Phil Foden. Beautiful player. What, a couple of years ago was the best player in the Premier League, in my view. Absolutely fabulous. And he's not lost that talent. It's about getting in the minutes and getting on the pitch and getting the confidence and belief back that he needs. But he's short of that at the moment. I think you are going to end up choosing, because Jude Bellingham, in my view, will always start. I think he has to start. He demands that position.
I think he will start, though.
Well, if I'm England manager, I'll start him every day and twice on Sunday. But basically, I think that you're right, Johnny. I think that basically Morgan Rogers is a factor in Tuchel's thinking. But I think then behind that is what fascinates me there, because I do think you probably only are going to allow yourself 3 10s. And Rodgers can obviously operate off the left, but then you're talking about, it would be hard to see not Rashford and Gordon going. So I do think it's going to end up being a choice between Palmer and Foden. Yeah. I think the one aspect is that Foden can play, and I know Palmer can too, but he can play as a false 9. I think from now until the end of the season, I think we're going to be talking about who gets fatigued, who gets injured. I think the demands on the players is crazy. That's why Tuchel has done the split squad, and we've all probably got different ideas on how effective that's been. I thought the game on Friday lacked an intensity because it was a B team. And basically the players were kind of thinking, where do I fit in? There wasn't much familiarity. I agree with Johnny. I thought James Garner did himself a power of good. He's a player that can play central midfield and right back. He might just have grasped the nettle. Between now and the end of the season, it's going to be about form. It's going to be about performances and consistency. And I just think that Garner has done himself a world of good. But I do think it's a really crunch time now. There's a few positions that I still think are open.
Well, that chat on the forward players, I think we can call it a little amuse-bouche, Jules. We'll get to that part of the pitch after 10 o'clock this morning. We'll stick with the defenders and the options, and there's been the line "good tourist" has been used. Obviously, the big talking point from Friday night was the reaction to Ben White after his goal. Johnny has written about that in the Sunday Times today. And says Wembley's reaction to Ben White showed that if the Arsenal player is to continue his international career, he has to explain himself. Perhaps he doesn't have to reveal the details of why he walked out on England at the last World Cup, but supporters do need to hear him express some sort of regret.
Yeah, look, I'm coming at that from a pragmatic point of view. I'm not moralising about Ben White. I'm not a fan of journalists moralising about footballers, and they've got a right to their privacy. So he has his reasons for what happened in Qatar. I don't think he has to explain the he said, she said of it all. And until Friday night, I think I'd have probably said you can leave it at that. But the reaction of the Wembley crowd, I think it's unprecedented. Somebody scoring for their country and being booed afterwards. I know we're in an era where fans love to boo anyway. Scotland were booed at Hampden after playing quite well against Japan, and we're going to the World Cup. It's amazing, but we're still booing us. So okay, I get that. We're in an age of anger and booing, but I just feel that from a practical point of view now, if Ben White's to have a longer England career, he needs, or it appears the public needs something from him, and I don't know what's wrong with him doing some sort of interview where he maybe just says, look, I hated having to walk out on my country. I had my reasons, but I didn't like having to do it, and I'd hope it would never happen again, and I love playing for England and blah, blah. But whatever it is that people need to hear, I just think that's the reality of it, because it's untenable for a player to score for their country and get booed, in my opinion.
I think it's a fascinating scenario, and I've got a lot of sympathy with them. I'm completely, agreeing with Johnny on that one, simply because I think that, does he need to explain it? I'm not so sure. I think every player is different. Every individual is different, and we see it in cricket quite a lot. Basically, players leaving tours, and they're long tours, and they can be a long time away from home. As I say, every character and every personality can be different. We don't.
That's the point. The point is that, you cover Arsenal a lot, but I've spoken to him before. He is a very different footballer,
Yes,
isn't he? He doesn't speak in
100%.
cliches. It's not something he loves playing, but it doesn't consume his life, does it? And that's different.
I agree, and I think the one thing that would probably help him, I think, and it's rather like Johnny, I'm not about to dictate. It's not my place to do that. He must speak out, and basically, I think that's ridiculous to try and lecture people on what they must and mustn't do. I think what would help and be helpful would basically him sort of set out how much he likes and wants to play for England. And I think then the base doesn't need to go over the past, because I think then that he could say, Thomas Tuchel told us that basically in his conversations and in his kind of dialogue with him, how passionate and determined he's gone. He wants to be back. Charlie White, in The Sun has written a nice piece about Ben White today. Charlie's always well informed and kind of, close to players and what have you. Says it hasn't affected him, didn't affect him Friday night. It won't define him, and he's happy to carry on and play on. I do think we've been here a bit before with booing, haven't we? We've had Sterling.
Jordan Henderson made that point on Friday, didn't he?
Lampard, and I think people can move on and kind of, fans will just get over it. I thought it was great that he scored. Isn't it always typical? It's written in the stars, and then obviously he becomes hero and then villain. But I just think he's a smart guy, brilliant player. If you were judging, all things being equal, he would be going to the World Cup. But because I think of the circumstance and everything that goes with it, I'd be a bit surprised if he's on the plane.
I felt for him a bit, and I thought Tuchel didn't do him a service, didn't do Ben White a service by talking about something that happened when Tuchel was not in charge. And Tuchel could easily have said, what happened with Ben White, I wasn't here, I don't know the details, but I spoke to him, he's super happy to be here, super motivated, blah, blah. Instead, I felt Tuchel just put more coins in the jukebox again about that, and it was the headlines again. And then I think people, even going to the game, read White everywhere, where he was not the story of this game. And I felt a little bit for him. And that's the issue I have with this.
I think however we've got here, we've been talking about how difficult it's going to be to get into that World Cup squad. I just think fellow players and the public need to feel that if Ben White gets a place in that squad, he's not going to walk out again, and he wants to be there. And even if it's not him talking, we need to shift that perception a little bit. And Tuchel didn't help him by saying he has to explain himself in apologise to his teammates, because that implied there was something
he was at fault in some way.
Exactly.
Which I'm not sure that's Tuchel's intention, but that is how it came across. So someone needs to manage this to shift the dial a little bit.
Just on the point about that area of the pitch then, and options and whether he should go as a right back, a lot of the chat last week was about Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think Gary Lineker made the point, look, he is a player that increases your chances of winning the World Cup. Are you surprised he wasn't in this split 35-man squad, and how surprised would you be if he doesn't make the final squad?
I think if you're not in this 35, you're not going in the US anyway. Tuchel can repeat as much as he wants. No, he's still in contention. If you don't make this one, this extended one as well, I don't think you're going to make the US one. Which I think is a problem. I take Trent every single day. I understand the flaws, and I understand, we've said it so many times, defensively it might not be perfect. I think Reece James is the best right back that England have anyway, but I would take Trent because I think he can do you a lot of services during the competition. He can start at right back, you can bring him on at right back, even somewhere else. I know we tried him in midfield before on the Southgate, didn't really work out, but there's other things you could do with Trent easily. Even if you change your system to a back three, there's a role for him to have, I think, in this squad. Is there something else that obviously Tuchel feels in terms of maybe being part of the squad? And we talked about that for Bellingham. And maybe there's something with Trent, I don't know. But I think in pure football qualities, there's no way Trent should not go to the World Cup.
Arsenal's internal shakeup continues, and the latest departure signals that the restructuring behind the scenes is far from over. James Ellis has stepped down from his role as technical director just 7 months after being promoted. According to BBC Sport, Ellis, who only took on the position last August after serving as head of recruitment, has now left the club amid what appears to be a wider internal overhaul. His exit doesn't come in isolation. In December, Arsenal appointed former Napoli executive Maurizio Micheli to a senior recruitment role, a move widely seen as part of the club's long-term structural reset. Just months earlier, Andrea Berta had been confirmed as sporting director, effectively replacing Edu Gaspar. That appointment alone signaled a new era. Now, with Ellis gone, the transformation feels even more deliberate. Ellis joins Edu and former CEO Vini Venkatesham among high-profile departures from the Emirates hierarchy. Both Edu and Venkatesham moved on to new roles. Edu taking on a global director of football position at Nottingham Forest, and Venkatesham joining Tottenham. However, neither situation appears entirely stable. Edu's time at the City Ground has reportedly been turbulent. Nottingham Forest's dramatic drop in form since his arrival has raised serious questions about the project's direction, and indications suggest his tenure there may not last much longer. Meanwhile, at Tottenham, Venkatesham has come under intense scrutiny from Spurs supporters, particularly for his initial backing and continued support of Thomas Frank, even as results and performances deteriorated from December onward. Eventually, Igor Tudor was appointed interim manager, and his first match in charge came in the most demanding fixture possible, the North London derby against Arsenal. Despite having just 7 days in the job, the 47-year-old Tudor understands the magnitude of the occasion and the adversity he's facing. "We trained with 13 players," Tudor admitted. "That's the reality. It's not ideal, but in moments like this, the challenge becomes even greater. And so does the opportunity to succeed." He added confidently, "We will have 13 players ready, and that's more than enough to achieve what we want on Sunday. I understand the importance of this match. It's a North London derby. Everyone expects 3 points from us. We are aware of that." Arsenal, however, arrive at the derby carrying frustration of their own. Consecutive draws against Wolves and Brentford have slowed their momentum, and Mikel Arteta made it clear there could not be a better fixture to respond. "It's the next game, and it's the one we're most excited to play," Arteta said. "If we could play today, we would. We have to use that feeling in our stomach the right way, and show it on Sunday." There are also selection decisions looming. Despite Eberechi Eze scoring 3 times in the reverse fixture, his place in midfield is no longer guaranteed. Competition has intensified, particularly after positive fitness updates on Kai Havertz and Martin Odegaard, both capable of operating in similar roles. "We'll have to wait until tomorrow," Arteta said cautiously. "But there's a strong possibility that both of them will be available." With tension rising both on and off the pitch, this derby feels bigger than usual. Arsenal are reshaping their leadership structure. Tottenham are battling instability, and both clubs are searching for momentum at a crucial stage of the season. Sunday won't just be about 3 points. It's about direction, identity, and control in North London. The broader picture, however, stretches beyond one derby or one boardroom exit. What is unfolding at Arsenal is a defining phase, a moment where structural decisions off the pitch could shape the club's competitiveness for years to come. The departure of James Ellis raises natural questions about continuity and recruitment strategy. Arsenal have invested heavily in building a data-driven, modern scouting network over the past few seasons. Under Mikel Arteta's leadership, recruitment has largely aligned with a clear footballing identity: younger profiles, tactical intelligence, technical security, and long-term resale value. Now, with Maurizio Micheli and Andrea Berta positioned as key figures, the club appears to be centralizing authority even further. For supporters, the concern isn't necessarily change, it's instability. Frequent turnover at executive level can create uncertainty during crucial transfer windows. With the summer approaching and expectations growing after consecutive near-title pushes, Arsenal cannot afford missteps in squad planning. Rivals are strengthening. Margins are thin. Every decision matters. On the pitch, the North London derby carries added psychological weight. Arsenal's recent draws against Wolves and Brentford weren't just dropped points. They dented momentum at a critical juncture of the season. Title races are often defined by response, how quickly a team reacts after disappointment. Arteta understands that narrative. Privately, there is belief within the squad that performances have not dipped as sharply as results suggest. Arsenal have maintained strong possession metrics, defensive structure, and chance creation numbers in recent matches. The issue has been efficiency, converting control into decisive moments. Against Tottenham, That margin for waste disappears. For Spurs, the situation feels even more volatile. Igor Tudor's interim appointment reflects urgency rather than long-term planning. Training sessions with limited numbers underline the squad's injury struggles, and depth will be tested against one of the league's most organized sides. Yet derby matches rarely follow logic. Emotional intensity often overrides tactical predictability. Another layer to the story is the competitive landscape at the top of the table. With Manchester City and Liverpool maintaining relentless standards, any slip can reshape the standings instantly. Arsenal know that draws at this stage can feel as damaging as defeats. The pressure is no longer about proving progress. It's about delivering silverware. Internally, Arteta's message has reportedly been direct. Block out external noise. The boardroom reshuffle, media speculation, and scrutiny around player selection cannot bleed into matchday focus. Leadership inside the dressing room, particularly from senior figures, becomes crucial in moments like this. There is also anticipation around the possible return of Kai Havertz and Martin Odegaard. Their availability would not only boost tactical flexibility, but also restore leadership and composure in key phases of play. If both are fit, Arteta faces a selection dilemma, but one he would welcome. In North London, perception shifts quickly. One result can calm doubts or intensify them. A victory would reassert Arsenal's authority, silence questions about momentum, and reinforce belief in the current project despite executive turnover. A setback, however, would amplify concerns about consistency at the worst possible time. Ultimately, this is a convergence of narratives: structural change, title ambition, squad depth challenges, and historic rivalry. The derby will not define the entire season, but it will send a message. And right now, both clubs are desperate to control that message.